Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Woodman, and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. In this video, we will talk about setting agreed norms and boundaries before a conversation. This is important because engaging in disagreement can get tense sometimes, and you want to ensure there are agreed upon rules between you and the other person that keeps the conversation structured. Whether the rules are to keep the conversation in one scope, not assume bad intent, not name call each other with insults or anything else, you and the other person need to be on the same page on how you will keep the conversation civil and respectful. Let's begin by looking at the creation of Change My View, or CMV, which will help lay the context of this video's subject. In 2013, when Cal Turnbull was 17 and in his final year of high school in Nerlin, Scotland, he became aware that he and his group of friends all tended towards similar views, whether on politics or music or TV. Turnbull started to wonder, where do you go if you want to hear from people who see things differently? It is not as simple a question as it seems. Anyone who has lived in the same place for a long time tends to spend their time with people who see the world roughly the same way they do. It is not always easy to find conversation partners who have strongly different views to your own. Even when you do, there is a social pressure to agree on things since, as we have seen, disagreement can feel awkward and unpleasant. You can go online, of course, but when Turnbull looked at debates on social media, he saw a lot of postering and pylons and little real engagement. There didn't seem to be a place you could go to have your views probed and challenged without feeling as though you were under fire. So Turnbull decided to create one. He started a forum on reddit.com called Change My View, or CMV. Within 5 years, it had over 500,000 subscribers. Change My View is a place you can go to explore the limits of your own opinions. Perhaps you have formed a point of view on something, but you have a feeling you are not seeing all the sides of the question, that you might be missing something important. Then take your opinion to CMV, and its community of users will help you think it through by politely disagreeing with you. Whether or not you end up changing your view, you will see things differently. Now, let's dive into the structure of CMV. When people celebrate the value of disagreement, they often emphasize free expression. But as social media platforms have revealed, when people are allowed to express themselves however they want, disagreements tend to degenerate into bitterness and abuse. CMV is not a place where anything goes. Turnbull worked with a team of more than 20 moderators enlisted from the group's regular contributors to maintain a tightly drawn code of conduct. Rule breakers are warned, then thrown off the platform if they ignore those warnings. Turnbull said, quote, "We have restrictive rules, but what they provide is freedom of certain conversations," unquote. The rules were not designed by Turnbull at the outset. They evolved organically over time as he and the user community gradually figured out what makes for a good disagreement and what does not. CMV works like this. First, you submit a view that you would like challenged. The site does not set any rules about the content of the belief. It could be anything, but it does have to be your belief. You can't say someone you know believes in a certain thing. You also should be genuinely willing to accept that your belief is wrong. This condition is hard to enforce since it is impossible to know for sure what is in someone's mind. But Turnbull and his team have identified some reliable proxies for bad faith. Submitters who offered the same justification for their view over and over, or who engage in repetitive rants without seeming to absorb or reflect on any of the questions from commenters, violate what is informally known as the no soapboxing rule. Soapboxing refers to the act of using a public forum, online or in person, to deliver passionate, unsolicited lectures, rants, or moralizing speeches, often intended to dominate conversations or gather an audience rather than engage in dialogue. It is characterized by self-righteousness, one-sided or unsolicited advocacy. Second, you will be asked to, quote, enter with a mindset for a conversation, not a debate, unquote, since the latter implies a competition between people who will never change their mind, where the objective is winning, not learning. The very act of submitting a view to CMB signals that the submitter is oblivious. Some part of their mind is open to change. It is about being a place people can visit to learn what else they should think about in their perspective in a civil way. Third, when you are submitting a question, CMB asks you not just to state your view explicitly, but to give a summary of why you believe it. That might include your reasoning, although the most valuable information, says Turnbull, usually has to do with how you came to believe it. Does your view have something to do with your personal life, the place you grew up in, and a specific experience, or something else? A philosopher might argue that how someone came to a view is irrelevant information, that whether or not a belief is right or is wrong or right can be established purely on logical or factual grounds. But Turnbull and CMB users have found that embedding the opinion in someone's life has a way of improving the conversation. Knowing something about where the submitter is coming from helps commenters shape their questions and arguments. The users who are most successful at changing views tends not to post off-the-peg arguments that could be used on anyone, but tailor their comments to the person behind the viewpoint. The more that commentators feel they are talking to a real person, the less likely they are to denigrate the views of the view, and the more likely they are to show that they are truly listening. And people who feel they have been listened to are more open to having their mind change. Turnbull believes when you listen, you are processing someone's reasons for their viewpoints in terms of how they got to those viewpoints. In most social media forums, Turnbull talked about people usually jumping straight to the point of disagreement without taking time to understand each other first. The result is that they scramble around on the surface of an issue without digging beneath. Turnbull said, quote, sometimes it is better to take your time getting to the point where you disagree. Start at the beginning, take a walk around the question, then see where you get to, unquote. Another benefit of asking submitters to spend time articulating their viewpoint is that it begins the process of opening their minds to flaws in their own position. As people discuss things in more detail, they often discover that they are less certain than they thought they were. Fourth, commentators are required to disagree with the submitted view. Turnbull didn't want this to be a place where people can come simply to have their views affirmed. After all, there are plenty of places for that. Crucially, however, the disagreement must be expressed courteously and respectfully. One of the rules is to not be rude or hostile. Turnbull's team of moderators are vigilant for any signs of rudeness or aggression. The prohibition of hostility, he says, is fundamental. Quote, it is very important people don't break this rule, because if they do, it just throws off the conversation and makes it hard for anyone else to get through to the author of the post after that point. It changes the tone, unquote. This is worth expanding on. Tone is something, or sometimes discussed as if it is a secondary characteristic of human interaction. Someone could tell you not to worry about tone, but instead focus on the substance of your statement. But tone is more important than content. It goes deeper than words. It is the medium through which we express the relationship we expect to have with who we are talking to. Your tone efficiently communicates how you see yourself in relation to someone else, as more intelligent or less, as dominant or differential, as somebody with whom you can be serious or playful. Until people establish a mutually agreeable relationship, a disagreement is bound to go badly because we won't know how to properly interact with each other. Turnbull notes that when people break the rule against hostility on CMB, they often do so without realizing and immediately apologize. Turnbull said, quote, they want to change this view of the other person. So by being rude, it is going against their own interests because they are less likely to get through to them, unquote. This should be obvious, but people ought to forget it in the heat of the moment. Fifth, submitters give awards to commenters who have shown them they are wrong. If and when a submitter decides that their view has been modified by a CMV conversation, they bestow on the commenter who made the difference a delta. A person with a high delta score gains status within the community since they have a proven ability to change other people's views. This gives commenters a strong incentive to maintain good relations with submitters because otherwise they won't be able to persuade them of anything. That is the overview of CMB Works. In the early days of the site, Turnbull and his fellow moderators noticed a problem. People who had their views swayed by a discussion had a tendency not to admit it. Despite adopting a different position to the one they started with, they would pretend, perhaps as much to themselves as anyone else, that they had pretty much held the same opinion all along. Turnbull wanted people to admit that they had been wrong, not because he wanted them to feel humiliated, quite the opposite. He wanted to destigmatize wrongness. He said, quote, "Nobody likes to be wrong. It is not a great feeling, but if you approach it positively, it is a chance to learn, gain insight, and lose some of your ignorance. It does not have to feel like an attack," unquote. Still, when we talk about, quote, changing my mind, unquote, we tend to think in terms of a 180-degree reversal of what you believed in. The trouble with this is that it puts a high price on the act of changing your mind. At CMB, participants are encouraged to award deltas merely when they feel that the discussion has led to a deeper understanding of the topic or when they have learned something from their challenges. Turnbull said, quote, "It helps to literally think in terms of view. If you have moved even slightly around, then you have got a new perspective," unquote. Turnbull has noticed that the people who are really good at changing their minds, such as users with high delta scores, are skilled at asking productive questions. They don't use questions as a way to humiliate the other person, but to understand their view more fully. Sometimes their questions expose a contradiction at the heart of the submitter's position, prompting them to rethink something. But this only works when the questions spring from genuine curiosity. Those who ask questions in a forensic prosecutorial style are less effective at changing minds because that kind of tone is interrogating. As Turnbull puts it, quote, "It might seem to contradict the whole idea of CMB, but starting with the intention of changing someone's view can actually ruin the process a little," unquote. Earlier in this video series, we talked about how writing behavior can backfire. A better approach to changing people's minds is to become someone's partner in an exploration where both of you are exploring new ways of thinking about something together instead of having one of you change your mind. The act of having your mind change and the act of seeking to change someone else's mind start in the same place with questions that point simultaneously at the question and the questioner. So what were the results of the CMV's work? Keep in mind that CMV is a fertile source of data for academic researchers interested in how and why people change their minds. A team of computer scientists at Cornell University analyzed over 2 years of postings on the platform. They found that about a third of submitters to the site had changed their mind. That may not sound high, but in the context of previous research on persuasion and altitude change, it is exceptional. The Cornell researchers ran numbers on which kinds of conversations resulted in deltas and which did not. Their findings echo and augment Turnbull's observations. For instance, the factor most associated with successful persuasion was using different words to those used in the original post. That is intriguing because it implies that to change a view, you need to somehow reframe the argument in different terms, putting it in a fresh context. It links to another finding the researchers made. The use of specific examples really helps to change people's minds, as does the use of facts and statistics. The best recipe is a combination of storytelling and hard evidence. Longer replies tended to perform better than shorter ones, although not if the commenter is seen to be soapboxing. A person's view was more likely to be changed over the course of a conversation with a commenter rather than by one devastating point. But if it wasn't changed after 5 rounds of back and forth exchanges, it was unlikely to be changed at all. So that is everything we need to know about CMV. As you can see, it is possible to create an online space to moderate civil discussions and arguments with clear rules and boundaries. So, how can we create a structure for online discourse in general? After all, it takes a small amount of deliberately disruptive or bad tempered participants to force their way to the forefront of everyone's attention, and before you know it, there is bad tempered gridlock and unproductive dialogue. Most people don't make a decision to be rude any more than they are relentlessly determined to remain polite. Whatever environment we are communicating in, we instinctively take cues from how others are behaving. That is true at the basic level of a dyad. When two people are talking and one injects even a hint of hostility into the discussion, the other notices immediately and feels an urge to follow suit. Online, that dynamic plays out at scale. Without thinking about it, participants look around and ask, is this the kind of place where I'm expected to let disrespectful behavior happen or to engage in respectful debate? This places a certain responsibility on each individual. With each remark we make, we can choose either to improve or to pollute the discourse. In fact, what you say may be less important than how you say it. After all, you cannot know for sure that you are right. What you can be sure of is the example you set, which is what you can fully control. At the same time, though, improving the quality of online disagreement is not just down to individuals. Well-designed rules make a difference too, as Change My Life has shown us. Even the simplest of rules can help as long as people are made aware of them. Some worry that strict rules have a chilling effect on participation and free expression. In 2016, Nathan Matilas, a professor of communication at Cornell University, looked into this. He conducted a study with Reddit's science discussion community, which had 13.5 million subscribers at the time. Matilas arranged things so that users in some threads saw an announcement of the community's rules, which include a prohibition on hostile language. Compared with discussions in which users were not shown the announcement, first-time commenters were significantly more likely to abide by the rules. Crucially, the participation rate of newcomers increased by an average of 70%. They were not being put off by the rules. Online or in the workplace, simply making the rules of interaction visible improves the conversation for everyone. Most of all, for those who haven't been around long enough to absorb the group's norms through osmosis, shared constraints of the rules create space for livelier disagreements. Rules are important not so much because people need to be told what to do or not do, but because they feel better about expressing themselves within a structure to which everyone is expected to adhere. Arguments can always get out of hand, either because people knowingly break rules or because they don't know the rules in the first place. But when people do get into a messy argument, they usually want to find a way out, and a clearly articulated set of rules can lead them there. Essentially, when a disagreement or conflict occurs, rules can guide us in how we can peacefully settle them. In conclusion, the story of Change My View shows us that we can moderate and structure a good exchange of disagreements by having clear norms, shared expectations, and a commitment to respect each other. These types of rules give us an opportunity to learn from each other rather than battling to win something. CMV works not because people avoid conflict, but because they structure it by having participants agree to be open-minded, explain where they are coming from, listen carefully, challenge ideas without attacking people, and value even small shifts in perspective. The platform's rules do not limit meaningful conversation, but help make it possible. By setting boundaries around tone, intent, and behavior, CMV creates a space where people feel safe enough to question themselves and be curious enough to understand others. With the research we looked at, it shows that minds are more likely to change when discussions are thoughtful, respectful, personal, and grounded in both evidence and real-life experience. We also know that every conversation is shaped by the example we set. Whether it is online, at work, or in everyday life, we constantly signal to others what kind of interaction is acceptable. When we lead with patience, curiosity, and respect, as well as agree on the rules of engagement beforehand, we make the dialogue productive for everyone. In the next video, we will talk about controlling your emotional reactions. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the post notifications so you will be notified when I post my next video. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.